Drop the cowling. Yeah! Did you get that? Watch your head. Welcome back to the hangar. Today we'll be taking off the cowling to do a modification for the oil cooler, and then we'll show you the proper way to put the cowling back on. And I'll even show you how to do it single-handedly. So I'm gonna grab off these, No, I'm not gonna grab off. I'm just gonna take these blankets off and we'll get to it, all right? Stick around.
My name is Christopher. I've been a commercial aircraft mechanic for 3 decades. I started in general aviation and always wanted to fly, but I got that chance several years ago and earned my private pilot license. I'm single-engine sea and land rated with a high power and tailwheel endorsement. And now I'm sharing my passion in hopes it will inspire others to pursue their dreams. So I invite you to take a seat and ride along with me as we look at the world from above.
Here in the Pacific Northwest, it's really cold. Blankets help keep the condensation from building up underneath the inside and dripping on everything inside. Corrosion inhibition. All right, aviation enthusiasts and Stinsonites all over the world. Today's project is to install a oil louver in front of the oil cooler. The oil cooler that I installed is an aluminum unit. It's extremely efficient. Does a really good job, except for when it's cold and you need to be able to get your oil temperatures up so you don't do any damage or less damage to the engine. So currently what I have is the oil cooler has got all this tape on it, and that's great as long as the temperatures stay consistent. So if you're traveling from a colder region to someplace that's hotter, or the engine needs more cooling while you're in flight, that's where this comes in handy, because you can operate this in hot or cold conditions. So we're going to start by taking off the cowling, and we'll show you this installation and then the installation of the cowling, and we'll do it just by myself. Kind of go over the nomenclature, as we say, the names of the parts we're going to be using. So the Stinson Cowling has 3 principal components to the cowling. This is the top cowling, you have the lower cowling, and then you have the bowl unit, as we call it. So these are also referred to as the cheek panels, and they can be held open by hold open rods on both sides. Now the upper cowling is held together in 2 locations with 2 screws each. So there are 2 screws up here, and then in the back 2 screws right here. So when those come off, it's real simple to take the upper cowling off. The bottom cowling is the one that's rather tricky. So we'll get the top one off, and then we'll start talking about the bottom and the bowl. So we don't need to have the cowling all the way up in order to take the screws off. Actually, it gets in the way. So all we need to do is just undo the latches and let it lay down. Take the screws out, and then this is how we lift it off the top of the cowling. Both sides, and straight up. And then carefully. Now, of course, when you take your cowling off, you want to rest them on some 2x4s here so it's not laying directly on the ground, especially if you've got nice paint. Now that we've got the top cowl off, it's now time to work on the lower cowling. So on the pilot side, we're going to take off this clamp for the heat exchanger muff. There's a clamp way down in here. That's for the fresh air. And then way down in here, we're going to have to take those screws out. Let me use my hand. 1, 2, 3 on this side. There's 3 on the other side. That is for the air going into the carburetor. That's all we need on this side, I believe. And here are those 3 screws. There's 1 here, 2, 3. And then, oh, the hard one. This is the one I love. Right up against, right in front of the oil cooler there. We'll have to disconnect that clamp as well. I like to keep the clamps in a direction that I can easily get a screwdriver or a socket on to undo those worm drive clamps. So we'll get all that stuff disconnected, and then we'll come back and get to the last screws that actually take the cowling off. Now, the nice thing about the Stinson is the amount of room you get behind the motor. I've worked on some airplanes where, man, the Skylane, just changing the alternator belt, you got to basically change it with chopsticks. So if you haven't gotten yourself into the habit of retaining your hardware into like little Dixie cups or some way, this is the best way not to lose a bunch of screws. Now on the air box here, take the screws, keep them together. We're on the right hand side of the airplane. This is the hot air hose coming off of the heat shroud. And so when you apply carburetor heat, you're actually opening up the valve that allows the hot air to flow in from here up into the intake and into the carburetor, which is right chair. Your cable is actually on the other side and operates a valve that switches from inlet air to the air coming into this side of the box. So this one doesn't need to be disconnected because it's basically engine to engine, whereas this one up here that I highlighted before, that's going from the inside. So we have this hole, that's the inlet air going into that heat muff for the carburetor heat. It is a little too difficult to hold the camera and try and get that hose off, but I'm sure to manage it. Go my ego. There we go. So going back together again, we'll show you how everything gets aligned and the sequence of how we put all the tightening. There's a definite sequence the way this cowling goes back together again. So now that we've got all of the hoses and everything on the inside disconnected, we can start taking our screws loose around the front of the bowl here, that screw all the way up here, and then we can take these fasteners, these 4 right here on either side. I'll commence to getting all these screws off, and then we'll drop the cowling here in a little bit. So we've got most of the screws loose. I've left one up here on top. All of these have come loose except for the one on top on both sides. And these are just about ready to come out. I mean, we're really close. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my improvised stand. So underneath is just a common chair with a moving blanket on it. And that's just going to hold this up while I take out these screws. And I'm really particular about keeping my screws organized. So I have a cup just for the screws in the front, and then I have another cup over there with screws for the back. That's the back, here's the front. Okay, so I've just taken off the screw, and it goes into this one. So the chair is here primarily, merrily, just to keep the cowling from not falling on the floor. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab it by the inlet, take the chair out of the way, Gonna reach over here and pop that screw loose. Holding it from the bottom, pop that screw loose, and then just that easily drop the cowling. Yeah! Did you get that? Watch your head. Jeez, prop strike. And now we can put the prop back into the maintenance position. Kind of. All right. Like I've never done that before. All right, so as you can see, we have a lot of access to most of the engine, and we're left with the bowl. Now, I've got some bad news for you. If you need to take this bowl off, guess what? So does your prop. So if you can work around everything by keeping the bowl on, I have seen some airplanes where they make a little cut on either side so they can split the bowl. That's not exactly approved, and I think it looks really bad anyway. So we're going to leave the bowl on for the purposes of what we need to do, but there's really not a whole lot with needing to take the bowl on and off if you're doing any engine work with taking the cowl off. So most of the access is what we need right now to do what we're going to do, or if you need to come in and work on a cylinder or work on something else that the cowling is in the way for. So, but that's popping off the cowling, and oh hey, welcome back to the hangar. An A&P school instructor used to say, "A clean shop is a happy shop." It's getting happy. Anyway, just finished up putting the oil cooler in, and now it's time to show you how to put the cowling back on. So stick around. All right, now that we got most of this area cleaned up, we're going to put the cowling back on. So I've got the chair with the moving pad on it, and just double check to make sure everything's all good to go as far as if you need to replace any nut plates or anything like that, or maybe you found a leak somewhere that you need. It's a lot easier to fix now with the cowling off than it is with the cowling on. So, all right, let's talk about a couple things you're going to need. Make sure you've got your screws available, like readily available. And we also will be using, I think the technical term for this is pokey thing. You'll just need something to go inside the holes while you're installing this to hold it in place, and that's if you're going to be doing it by yourself like I am. So basically I just need something to go through the hole and kind of hold the cowling in place. So be careful with a lot of this stuff. If it's really sharp, you can use an awl, and that's a AWL. Or if you've got a small little screwdriver, just something to go through the hole and help hold it in place. Oh yeah! We're going to pick up the cowling and carefully place it in place. Just gathering up my screws. These are the ones for the back. Now in here, this is that hose that is really a bear, because this one actually has to turn up and connect to the air muff up under here. So if you do happen to need to take your front cowling off, it is so much easier to get to that hose if this bowl is off. If not, then you're just going to have to struggle with it. It's just the way it's going to be. So I have my fasteners handy. Oh yeah. So what I'm going to do is just carefully take Took this cowling. I'm gonna get the first hole over here lined up. And then I poke my awl through there. And then with my other hand, I grab my other awl. And I come over to this side, as long as it doesn't let go. Something's not happy here. I'm just going to pin that and then bring my chair underneath, and now I'm hands-free. And that's what's hanging up in here is the air cleaner. Oh, that was not good. That thing is wedgicled in there, really. I had to take this side down. Right in the air cleaner. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Take my first screw. So we're going to do this on both sides. So what the awl helps you do is line up this second hole so that you could get this one just started. Don't screw it all the way down. Don't screw any of these screws down all the way until we're finally done. The very end. And I'm going to go to the middle here. The back isn't really lined up very well. And I'm going to need a pokey thing for this as well. I'm running out of pokey things. And I'm just using just enough pressure in these holes to get this to line up. So this side really needs to come up. I'm going to make sure everything is hunky-dory in here. That air cleaner just does not like to sit right. It's looking good in there. Yeah, sometimes you got to fight these things. Get them to line up right. But once you get it started, these first few are just, they are just the bears. Just get it in the hole, try and get it started. And started. See? Just like that. And then just you want to work your way around Try and get some more fasteners up here in the front. And yes, my mags are off. And same on this side. So basically, it's 4-pointed now. So there's one in the back, one in the front. Got this one, and we've got the one in the back. So next thing to do is just go around and get all the other screws just started. And I could not emphasize that any more. Just started. We'll do the top of the cowl and then latch up both cheek sides, and what that does is there's a lot of movement between all these pieces. Even now you can see there's a lot of movement, and when you get the top one on and latch down, it will allow you to cinch up and torque these screws along the bottom and then back through the top where the top cowl actually attaches to. And then you can pop them back open and then torque up these side ones in here. The ones that are, these actually are covered. This is actually underneath the cheek cowl when it comes down and latches in here. Alrighty then, now that we got all of our screws in, it is time to put the top cowl back on. So this is always fun because this thing just kind of goes all over the place. Need the prop to be back in the watch your head stage. Alright. Get the prop in the right spot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully place this over the top and try not to scratch anything. So I'm going to lay the back on first, right where those nut plates are at, and then carefully just set it down into place. And then I have my screws here already. Pokey thing, this thing right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to circle my pokey thing in the hole until it lines up. Remember, not tight, just started. Just like that. So there's still, you can still grab a fingernail underneath there that allows some movement in the cowling. I'm going to go over to the back side here and we'll get these started. So as you can see, it's pretty floppy back here. So what I'm going to do, find where that wants to live. Let's see this one better. So you can see the angle there, and that means the front cowling is pushed too far forward. So what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of a tug here. So I'm pulling with the awl towards that hole, which takes some pressure off that screw. And then hopefully this one might have to pull on the cowling a little bit. And then once it gets started, get it down to where it's almost touching, but not quite. Chair out of the way, it's not needed. Now this is the secret. Now that everything's kind of loose, we're going to come in here and lock our cowling down. You see that gap in through here? We're going to try and get rid of that, because everything is still kind of not seated yet. It's pretty tight on this side and kind of loose on this side. That means the bowl is shifted this way too much. So I'm going to give it a proper yank. I smelled gas when I did that. Loosen this up a little bit. And that's why it's very important to have your screws loose. So what I'm doing is I'm just checking all the screws to make sure they're not too tight. I'm actually going to loosen them up just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. Now, try and grab this bowl and there we go. I saw it move that time. Well, it's better anyway. Latch down. So there's a little more of a gap here. I'm not crazy about up here, so I'm gonna try and see if I can get it to lift a little bit more. But that one's actually a little bit better. It almost looks that's why it's always so noisy. I'm like that close to the runway. Top one. I'm not crazy about it. Moved at all? Maybe a little bit. All right. I like the way it sits back here. Right here. Double checking all my lines too. That's another good indication you got your cowling back in the right spot. This side moved. It needs to come that way a little bit. And it's a little bit off. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to start up here and I'm going to start working, see if I can start working these screws down this way, and maybe I can get this line to get a little straighter. But everywhere else looks pretty good. Yeah, it's almost like this half needs to go forward a little bit more. That's why we look at it. We just double checking everything to make sure it's sitting kind of where it's supposed to be at. Once you get this latched in here, everything should be locked in place. It should be much more solid. The only movement you should get is out of these loose screws. Once you're relatively happy with the way everything's sitting, I would start at the firewall and then go to the nose bowl. And then once everything's all tightened up, then we can, or you can, I'm gonna do my own. You'll have to do yours. Come down the side here and get all these lower screws in place. And then once you get everything all tightened up along the back and underneath the bowl, then you can move to the top of the top cowling on the bowl. And then once all those screws are all tight, then you can open up your cheek panels, the cheek cowlings, and then get the 4 screws on top that those cover over. So the nice thing about not having wheel pants is you can sit on your tires. Kind of like that. I have wheel pants, I just don't use them. Mostly because I don't want to mess them up. Now if you noticed, I'm using a screwdriver. And the reason for that is these screws can get too hot. Some of these nut plates are actually the nylon style, and if you're using an electric screwdriver, you can get them too hot. They'll get, and then it starts melting that nylon. Now that we get everything else tightened up, we can open up our top cowl, and then come in here and get this one and that one. So the only thing left to do is the inside stuff. So we need to get this hooked up, tightened. Fresh air hose here. And then the screws going along, those 6 screws for the air filter. And then on the other side is the one hose. That is a bear. That's the one that's just not fun. So. Yeah. In hindsight, I do remember hooking up this hose just as it's supported, so it gives a little more room in there to get give yourself a little more space to get the hose started and up onto that shroud. So it can be done with it in place, just a lot easier if you've got that much more room. Okay, so I've got the screws for the filter started but not tightened on the other side. Somehow get in here and get that adjusted correctly. Now that I have the other screws on the other side, I can tighten these up, so I will do that here directly. All right, 3 screws on this side, both hoses hooked up, this side's done. One One nice thing about this cowling is it's got auto ejection. All right, well, everything on the everything on the inside's all buttoned up, and so's the outside. So I hope that helps give an idea of how to put your cowling on in the sequence that you do put it on. This is the method I use and works pretty good for me. So if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down there, and we'll see you on the next one.